This woman has two faces. She was apparently too dangerous, she could get away with anything. Most of us love sweet, delicious ice cream. The flavor options are endless. The same goes for relationships. There are so many fish in the sea for us to choose from. For Estibaliz Carranza, she collided the two worlds in a way no one has ever seen before. Said to be one of the most visually appealing serial killers ever, Esti took out her anger on her partners in one of the craziest true crime stories ever told. Come with us as we get into the sugary and deadly details of the woman who stored her lovers in ice cream tubes. Born on September 6, 1978 in Mexico City, Estibaliz Carranza, or Esti as many people called her, grew up in the Catalan city of Barcelona, Spain. Her family moved there when she was the tender age of 5, including her father, Armando Carranza Mendoza, her mother, Angela Zabala, and her younger brother. Her father was an author of books related to esotericism, shamanism, and the lives of the Incans, Mayans, and Aztecs. Esotericism often involves knowledge that is meant to be revealed to people who have been initiated into a certain group. Shamanism is a religious practice associated with indigenous and tribal societies. It involves the belief that shamans have the power to heal the sick, communicate with spirits, and even escort souls of the dead to the afterlife. Esti was known to have a difficult relationship with her father. She claimed that they were not allowed to attract attention and felt like they weren't even allowed to exist at times. His often macrame views did not make it any easier. The family fled to Spain when Esti's father was marked as an activist, and armed forces raided their family home. The violent event left an impact on her as she remembered the uniformed men with weapons who trampled through their home and smashed her dolls under their feet. At their new home in Barcelona, they often felt confined within the small space. Esti's father worked from home and was a tyrant about noise. A migrant from Mexico, she was often bullied at school and had a difficult time making friends. Esti was obsessed with having children from a young age. By 10 years old, she was asking her mother when she would be old enough to have a child of her own. Many of her peers laughed at her and believed it was just a phase she would grow out of, but the lingering desire to be a wife and a mother always remained. When Esti was a teenager, she was assaulted by an older man who had invited her to a private party. When she arrived, he led her into a back room where he handcuffed her and proceeded to do whatever he wanted without her consent. She never reported the crime or told anyone about it until she wrote her memoir that was published in 2014 titled My Two Lives: The True Story of the Ice Lady. This situation and her hatred for her father led to many fantasies where she harmed men who had done her wrong. When she was 17, her father sent her to university in Barcelona to study economics. This was not her choice, but rather what her father wanted her to do. And she always wanted to receive acceptance from him, so she completed the 5 years of education. During this time, she began her first serious relationship with a man, and it lasted the entire length of her studies. She had ideas of them having a family together and building the life she always wanted. Unfortunately, when she brought up the idea, he told her he was not ready for a serious relationship. How do you date someone for 5 years and then tell them you don't want a serious relationship? This added him to the list of men who had wronged Esti in her life. She had fantasies of killing him by cutting the brakes on his car or messing with the heating inside of his apartment. When Esti graduated from university with top honors, she moved to Munich, Germany, where she became an au pair. An au pair is another term for a nanny for children, most often used in Europe. It is believed that she became an au pair because of her love of children and desire of having her own one day. She picked up the language quickly and eventually left her job to work in an ice cream parlor near Nuremberg. Once again, she was in a new town and had difficulty making new friends. In 2002, she was working away when an older man walked into the ice cream shop. He was a refrigerator salesman 14 years older than her, named Holger Holtz. Only a few weeks passed before Holger asked Esti to marry him. She was only 22 at the time, but she wanted babies as soon as possible, so she agreed. Neither of their families attended since they believed it was too soon. As he put a ring on my finger, I was crying inside. I knew I had made a mistake, claimed Esti. Holger became worse and worse as he verbally and physically assaulted Esti. He took all the money that she earned and even stole her documents when she wanted to return to Spain. Holger Holtz was a Hare Krishna devotee. The International Society for Krishna Consciousness, or the Hare Krishna movement, bases its core beliefs on the Hindu scriptures. The religion is mostly based around Bhakti Yoga and the use of chanting to please the god Krishna, whom they consider the Supreme Lord. They do not believe in before marriage, which at one time appealed to Esti when she viewed this as a romantic gesture. In 2005, Holger moved Esti to Vienna, Austria, by convincing her that if they moved there, he would be ready to start a family with her. Here, they opened a new ice cream parlor named Shrilika Ice Cafe. Unfortunately for Esti, she spent most of her time running the business, while Holger lazed around at home playing video games and obsessing over his weapon collection. He constantly told her she was unattractive, even though she tried her best to dye her hair and wear appealing outfits for him. He then began refusing to have physical relations with her entirely, which crushed her chances of becoming a mother. How was I going to get pregnant? I began to hate him. I fantasized in my mind over and over again about killing him, about taking the he was obsessed with and using one to him in the head, she claimed when she discussed her relationship with Holger. In 2007, Esti met a man named Manfred Hintenberger. He was a 48-year-old man who she had met at the couple's ice cream parlor when he came in one day to sell her a new ice machine. He was also a salesman who swept Esti off her feet with promises of a future family. Esti was finally done with Holger and divorced him, but he refused to leave their apartment. Esti and Manfred also had a relationship full of ups and downs. They broke up a few times and she continued to go on dates with other men in hopes of finding someone who wanted the same out of life that she did. On April 27, 2008, Esti was getting ready to go on a date with a man from the internet when she struck up a conversation with Holger that he needed to move out. He told her that she was useless and would not be able to live by herself. Esti was enraged that he refused to leave and noticed some of his laying out on the dining room table. As he sat at the computer playing video games, Esti grabbed his Beretta .22 caliber and pulled the trigger, getting Holger in the back of the head twice, then once in the temple. She said, "He told me, Esti, give up looking. You are never going to find another man." That was when it happened. There were 4 on the table. I took one of them and walked up behind him. I pointed one at his head and pulled it once, twice, 3 times. It was just like the scenario I had enacted over and over in my head, except this time, it was real. After murdering Holger, she left the apartment and spent the night with her new lover. She told herself it was the only way to get him out of her life, since he would not leave on his own. The following morning, she left for work and spent the day serving ice cream and running her business, ignoring the fact that her dead ex-husband was waiting for her at home. When she arrived back at her apartment that night, Esti was hit with reality. As she opened the door, she saw him slumped over the computer in the same position she had left him in the night before. She decided the best way to dispose of his body was to burn it. She refused to move the body and instead covered him in an accelerant right in front of the computer. Unfortunately for Esty, it is extremely hard to burn a body. Her wishful thinking backfired when the apartment filled up with smoke and a neighbor called the fire department. When they came to her door, Esty turned on her charm and told them that she had simply burnt the fish she was making for dinner. Incredibly, they believed her and left. Esty could not cope with Holger's body any longer and left her home to spend the night at her internet lover's apartment again. The following day, a neighbor knocked on Esty's door to find out what the bad smell coming from her apartment was. She realized she could no longer ignore Holger, so she went to the store and bought a chainsaw. It took her 2 days to follow through with her grotesque master plan. Something only Sweeney Todd could do. I then realized I was going to have to cube him, so I purchased a chainsaw. The salesperson looked at me strangely when I told him I wanted to operate it myself. He told me, "You better watch out or it's going to flow." I thought to myself, he didn't know how true that was. I can say to anyone who has seen a horror film that the reality of cubing someone is far worse. Esty spent another handful of days cleaning the human stains out of the apartment. No one realized he had gone missing. Instead, she told everyone he had gone to India to join the Hare Krishna devotees. Everyone thought Holger had finally moved on, and they were happy that Esty's divorce was behind her. In the fall of 2008, Esty was given notice that she had to move out of her apartment. She pulled Holger's body out of the freezer and began filling ice cream tubs with each piece, then filled them with concrete. She couldn't find a container large enough for his head, so she poured concrete directly into her freezer to seal it. Then she called a taxi and took all the parts to the Schleckeria Ice Cafe. She brought them all into the basement, stating that it was similar to a cemetery down there, calm and peaceful, so it was fitting for him to be there. She also mentioned that she would go down there to talk to him often. Creepy, right? In 2010, Esty and Manfred got back together. She was hopeful that he had a change of heart and wanted to build a family with her. But most of these thoughts were actually delusions, as he told her from the beginning that he did not want more children, and they should be in an open relationship. Esty was heartbroken, but for some reason, she stayed with him. Who knows why she decided to be with someone who clearly did not want the things in life that she wanted the most. He had her go through multiple cosmetic operations, including a nose reduction, facelift, and lip injections. One night while Manfred was out, Esty came across a dating platform that he had been using. He described his perfect woman in the bio, a sporty, well-built woman who loved skiing and cycling. These were all the opposite traits of Esty. She couldn't bear the thought of him looking for other women anymore. She tried to distract herself with trips to visit family in Barcelona, but even that didn't help. Esty began fantasizing again, but this time it would be different. She took classes to learn how to use weapons and attended a workshop to learn how to mix concrete properly. She purchased a new chainsaw and prepared to kill her boyfriend. On November 21st, 2010, Esty laid plastic sheeting out in the bedroom to prepare for Manfred's demise. They had returned home from a trip together and had gone out for dinner, where Manfred continued to look at other women and enrage Esty. That night, she waited for him to fall asleep after another fight, then shot him 4 times in the back of the head at close range. Once again, she had killed another lover. But this time, she was prepared. He turned his face to the wall and started snoring. "I was so angry," she claimed. She cubed him up into little pieces, as she did with Holger, then sealed them in ice cream tubs full of concrete. She told neighbors that the sound of the chainsaw was just a new ice cream machine she was working with. Once the concrete died, she brought the tubs to the basement of the ice cream shop and put them alongside Holger. Now she had 2 dead bodies in her basement. She attempted to hide the smell with air fresheners as best she could. She went on living life as usual, getting a manicure to fix her nails, running the ice cream parlor, and hanging out with friends. Unfortunately, Manfred didn't disappear as easily as Holger. Many of his family and friends began asking about him and what happened between the two of them. Because of this, Esti reported him missing 4 days later. She told everyone he simply did not love her enough to stay. The following month, she began a new relationship with a 47-year-old friend of Manfred's named Roland R. She described him by saying, "He is totally different. He's very gentle, the opposite of macho. He would not bring me into such a situation." By the summer of 2011, Esti and Roland were happy together, and she thought she was finally getting what she had always wanted. She was pregnant and engaged to the man of her dreams. But those dreams died on June 11th, when a water pipe burst in the basement of the Schleckeria Ice Cafe. City maintenance workers broke into her locked cellar to fix the pipe, but found much more than they were expecting. Inside the cellar were a weapon and a freezer filled with cement. They instantly called the police, who discovered Holger and Manfred's remains. When she arrived at her cafe that morning, she saw the police and knew it was game over for her. She told her friend to grab her savings book from the ice cream parlor and meet her on a bridge nearby. She cried and thanked the woman, then realized she still needed her passport from home. Lucky for her, she saw an old friend who agreed to give her a ride and grab her passport for her. When he pulled up, he told her, "If I'm not back in 15 minutes, take the car. Just go." However, he returned with her passport and agreed to buy her a prepaid SIM card, then sent her to the airport in a taxi. When Esti arrived at the airport, she gave the driver a note she had written for Roland and paid for him to take it to his place of work. In the note, she gave him her new phone number. She went into the airport and booked a flight to Paris. On her way to the terminal, Roland called her, wondering why she wanted him to join her at the airport. She claimed that she was going to Spain to see her father as he was terminally ill. He didn't believe her reasoning, so she asked for his forgiveness for the terrible things she had done. After speaking with Roland, she decided that boarding a flight was too risky, so she headed to the train station. Police were waiting for her at the terminal gate, so she would have been arrested if she had tried to catch that flight. She desperately wanted to leave the country, but realized no international trains were leaving anytime soon. She got into a taxi and asked them to drive her to Udine, Italy, a town roughly 5 hours away from Vienna. While in the car, she heard a broadcast stating that the police were looking for her. She confessed to the taxi driver that she was running from the police, and he told her he would take her no further than the town of Cavazzo. Incredibly, she still convinced him to take her to a hotel and book her a room under his own name. Many say that was because of her looks, and she could get away with anything. The following morning, she convinced another hotel guest to give her a ride to Udine. She thought it would be easiest for her to hide there. When she arrived, she went to a hair salon and had them dye her hair dark. She found a busker named Ivan who agreed to let her stay with him after she told him she was running from her boyfriend. After a few days, he became increasingly suspicious of her as she was obsessed with the case of the Ice Lady from Austria. On the morning of June 10th, 2011, Ivan called the police and they arrived to arrest Esti. She confessed almost immediately to her crimes as she noticed she had begun to and was worried for her unborn child. The police took her to the hospital to make sure that the baby was okay, then extracted her to Vienna. While in jail awaiting trial, Esti gave birth to her baby boy in January 2012. She named him after his father Roland, and shortly after the two were married. Many people were confused as to why he would marry a He claimed, in truth, she's the most wonderful woman in the world. He also said he would wait for her to be released, regardless of how long she had to stay in prison. She loved Roland dearly and claimed she would never kill him. Had I met Roland earlier, I would have never become a killer. Roland attempted to gain custody of their son, but without success, the child went to live with Esti's parents in Barcelona. In late November 2012, Esti made a full confession to the court in a detailed testimony. She claimed that Holger was a violent and lazy bully and described her relationship with Manfred as a prison. "I can't say anything other than that I'm sorry I took Holger and Manfred's lives," she claimed in her final statement. "All people are only some have not yet started and most never do. It means nothing if someone is innocent. I was also innocent once. Then I 2 men." She was initially diagnosed with serious mental and psychological abnormalities, but psychologists ruled that she was fit to stand trial. Court psychologist Adelheid Kastner said that there is a 1 in 3 chance that she would commit another murder if she was set free. "This woman has 2 faces," claimed the prosecutor Petra Frey. "She will try to play the part of someone well-behaved who would never do something like this. My task is to show you her other side. She is a singularly cold-blooded and unscrupulous killer. Do not be fooled." On November 23, 2012, Estibaliz Carranza was sentenced to life in a mental institution. Her lawyers appealed the sentence, but the judgment was confirmed by Higher Regional Court of Vienna on March 20, 2013, and it was finalized. In 2014, she was transferred to an all-male insane asylum just after the release of the memoir she wrote in jail, in which all proceeds go to her son. It was rumored that she was apparently too dangerous to be housed with other females, but this was false. She was actually moved to the institution as the first woman there, but 13 more would follow behind her. It's a modern institution that provides intensive psychological care to inmates. Prisoners can roam around freely, and some are even allowed to cook their own meals. In 2015, Esti and Roland divorced, citing issues around the custody of their son. It's not surprising to us that their marriage ended so soon, especially since she is locked away in jail forever. Sensationalized like Esti always have strange fans. One of them would regularly transfer money to her so she could talk to her son on the phone. The fan also scheduled Roland's visits with his mother, and he always believed he was visiting her in the hospital. In 2018, Esti announced that she had fallen in love with another inmate. Martin has combined personality disorder with borderline syndrome and narcissism. Because of this, he has a violent temper. His criminal energy is particularly high. He is a pathological liar. Further, Martin, unlike me, is a classified sociopath. He makes the darkness within me chime. That's good. It is time for me to meet this side of myself. She is the best person I have met in my entire life, claimed Martin. The relationship became worldwide news after a book on Esti's life was published by author Bernhard Solomon titled Cell 14, the true love story between the murderous Estibaliz Carranza, known as the Ice Lady, and fellow inmate. After the release, Martin was transferred to a different detention center. However, they were engaged shortly before then. Their visual appearances were constantly discussed in the news. She is extremely well-groomed, always well-dressed, she keeps fit, and always has perfectly lacquered nails, claimed Bernhard. However, nothing interpersonal came across during the encounters with her. Narcissistic people work with illusions. They push backdrops in front of them. Behind it, feelings, empathy, actually everything human, withers away. When the relationship was revealed, her long-term visits with her son were taken away, and she was monitored 24/7. Her family was extremely unhappy with the relationship and threatened to stop visiting. Her lawyer, Astrid Wagner, said, "Being completely separated from her boy would mean a disaster for my client." In 2019, it was announced that the two had split. Esti ended the relationship when she discovered that Martin was suspected of having traded child from his cell. He denied the accusations. Doing something evil to little defenseless boys and girls, them, is the very last thing. My son deserves a stepfather. Her lawyer also mentioned, in my opinion, suspicion against Mr. L has deeply shaken Mrs. S. She no longer wants anything to do with him. One of the most chilling comments made by Esty throughout her crimes was when she said, "Without my brand Ice Lady, it would be like I don't exist anymore. It gives me strength. It makes me proud." What a whirlwind this story was. What do you think about Esty? Does she deserve the notoriety of her crimes because she's what many consider an attractive woman? How do you feel about the fact that her victims' families have never spoken about the crimes? Don't forget to click that notification bell, like the video, and subscribe to our channel. Until next time.